Hi, it's Lucy here, and I'll be using this background die to create lots of cards. Here's one card I created already, and I want to use this whole sheet of PET images, and I love how this turns out and all the rest of the cards, so let's get going. And first I have a piece of white card that's a little larger than the background die, and I'm going to peel off the backing of the PET sheet and place it at the top of the white card, and then I can slowly pull off the rest of the sheet. I'll choose which way the die will look best with these particular images, and then I can die cut it out. I haven't used a shim or extra paper for more pressure, but I will pop it back and forth through the machine, so hopefully it will cut through beautifully. When taking the pieces out of the die, I'll try to keep them in order. Then I'll die cut a piece of blank white card with the die again, and this will help me to create the framing. You'll see how it'll work as we go along. I'm going to cut another piece of thinner white card, and this is 200 GSM. I'll cut it slightly larger than the die again, so I've always got wiggle room for any errors I might make. And the easiest way to create with background dies that I've found is to use these wide double-sided tapes. And this is 10 centimeters wide or 4 inches wide, and I love this stuff. I use it often, and yet a roll lasts me forever. It has backing on it, so once we peel that off, the whole piece of paper is adhesive, and the size of it fits background dies perfectly. The first thing I do is make an error. I was supposed to add the image frame, not a white one, but I'll fix that later. And I'll start adding all the frames inside each piece. And with this background die, I recommend trying to keep the pieces in order as some are similar size to each other. It's so fun though, and after I've shown this process, I'll just show the different backgrounds I've made with it, and then we'll embellish them all as well. There's 10 cards all up. And when I'm adding the frames and pieces, I place them gently at first to make sure I have them in the right place before pushing them down permanently. But back to the card, and I'll cut around the frame so it's all neat. Then because I added the wrong frame earlier, I'll just glue the one I wanted over the top of the white frame, and we're all good. I've just die cut a brown sentiment and a white shadow, and I must tell you at the time of chatting, this sentiment die is back in stock. And I think it normally sells out quickly, so I use it in most of my videos as it's one of my favorite sentiment dies. So if you want it, there'll be a product link to it in the description box too. And that's also the same place that you can get that wide tape from as well. If you're not sure how to open the description box, just click on the word more and all the information you need about this video will come up. I add double-sided tape and glue to anything I'm going to adhere to PET or washi tapes or metallic and glitter papers just to ensure it stays put permanently. I also add an acrylic block to the top of the card once it's glued down just to make sure that the glue dries nice and evenly and flat onto the card. While that's drying, I want to show you another way with the other PET sheet I had out of that pack, and I've added these images individually onto each piece. It would have been easier to do the first way I showed and onto the pattern paper in the first place, but if like me you decide you want to add more interest on a background, this works too. I'm going to add this image onto the top piece, and then I can use my craft knife to cut everything that's overhanging off the triangle and peel them away, and you'd never know it wasn't part of the background paper. Then all I need to do is add a sentiment, and this card is finished. I'm adding foam tape in the middle so the sentiments are even with the triangles. You'll notice I didn't add the frame on this one, just the triangles, but I layered them up so they're more like tile pieces, and I love doing this. I think there's probably 2 thick white layers underneath each piece, and that was just a case of die cutting the frame out twice. And then here's the first card. Do you think they turned out differently to each other? Do you have a favorite? I have so many more to show, so let's see if you have a different favorite at the end of the video. This next background I created with 4 different papers, and most are pattern papers and really interesting, but I did use craft paper on some of the triangles and they seem a bit boring in comparison to the others, so I'll add some PET tape to them the same way I just did on the last card. And this time, because it has the frames, it's even easier to cut the overhanging bits off, as my knife will go into the crevice between the papers. I'll add the PET tape to the other pieces of craft card and do the same technique. I'll then add a suitable sentiment, and there's another card down. This next background was created the same way but with a different background die. It's also from In Love Arts, both of the background dies are. And I've recently added a video using mostly this die. It's one of my favorites and I think I've used it in about 4 videos now. But here's a beachy version, and I'll just add a white sentiment and flip-flops I made on a previous video that I had left over. Actually, these flip-flops were made with part of the PET sheet I just used on the second card. I'll add one of the flip-flops videos I made to the end of this video, as I use a few on this video too. They're really fun and easy to make, and I made so many I just couldn't stop, and now I need to use them up. I'll add the same to this card and pop it to the side with my acrylic block to make sure the glue sticks well while I get onto the next. These are really old papers that I'm using today. This is a 6x6 size, but I'll cut the rectangles I want out of it, and the rest I can use as layers underneath on some to add height and recycle at the same time. I'm also going to mount them onto craft cardstock so they match some of the card background. And I'll use my fingernail to rough up the edges of the pattern paper. You don't need long fingernails, I only have little ones and this works for me. I'll add 2 of the rectangles to the card front, but the second one will overlap the other, so I've added foam tape on the second one, but I've used one thinner bit of foam tape where it will overlap the other piece, and this way everything should sit nice and evenly on the card. Having any embellishments sitting completely even on the card makes a big difference to the overall look of a card. So I've done the same with the flip-flops. We call them thongs here in Australia, but I know that doesn't mean the same thing elsewhere, so I'll stick with saying flip-flops. This next one is a Father's Day card for my father-in-law, who we call Pop. I printed the personalised sentiment on my computer and printed it out. One day I'll do a video on sentiments and fonts on the computer. I have a lot of information on them, but it's finding time to research recording my laptop screen, then editing and chatting. One day I'll get there. So I've just added some foam tape to the thongs and sentiment to give them some height, and there's another card finished. This next one, I have a rectangle piece from the same papers, and I'm sorry I'm using papers that aren't available as they're so old. You may even have them in your stash. I think they're Craft, but as always, you can change these up with any papers you have in your stash. And I'll mount it onto white card, and then I'll add some of the paper I won't use as a scrap layer underneath. If you know you won't use a certain piece of pattern paper out of a set, rather than keep it, just pop it in a recycling drawer to use as layers underneath. I also do this with printer paper, but I use the other side of it to scribble down notes and lists, and then I just throw it out once I'm finished with it. I experimented with laminating things a while back, so I'm going to add this laminated sentiment, which I think matches the card well. And this background had too much craft cards, so I feel this has made the card a whole lot more interesting by adding a larger centerpiece. I don't worry about covering up most of the background. You can still see it and it adds a lot of interest still. And this next card, I'll use my distressing tool to rough up the edges of the centerpiece and then add it to craft card. You can also use your scissors to rough up the edges as well, or your fingernail like I did before. And I'll add a sentiment to finish off the card. And then we can take a look at all of the cards I made, 8 with the 1 background and 2 with the heart background die. I hope these cards have given you some ideas. Please give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it so far. The background dies are from In Love Arts, and they sell for $8.99 US or $14 Australian, and they have free shipping for orders over $29 US. And I'll also have a special code for an extra 25% off your whole order. So use the code Lucy25 at checkout. I'll have all the details listed and linked in the description box below, so you don't need to remember all this information. The PET sheet, and if you haven't heard of PET stickers and tapes before, they're images which have a transparent background, unlike washi tapes that have a white border. And this means you can layer them up. Some have a glossy look and others are a matte finish. And the PET sheets I used today are from Journal Say. They're so gorgeous in real life. I hope it shows on video. There's 2 different sheets in a pack, and the packs are $1.20 US or $1.76 Australian, or you can buy a bundle of 6 different packs. I also have the camping pack, but they have a gorgeous sunset one and a fall one and more. But please understand the prices are estimates, as both companies often have sales on, plus currency conversions change, but this gives you an idea of the prices. I also have an 8% off code for Journal Say. It'll also be in the description box below. So thank you so much for watching. If you're in the mood for more inspiration, please click on this video thumbnail, as I've chosen one that shows more ways to add embellishments to the heart background die. I'm on holiday at the moment, so I'll be loving reading your comments, but I won't be able to reply to any unless urgent. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Happy crafting and bye for now.